Hello and welcome. This is Wilrens for Create a Learning Site, the place to go deeper in your understanding of the Bible. As explained in the previous issue, my pilgrimage through Italy on the Via di Francesco turned into a pilgrimage through the Gospel of John, using something like an Ignatian approach to Bible meditation. Starting with the question, Jesus makes God known. How does he do that? I only offer a small taster here. The idea is to whet your appetite so that you will go and do your own meditation on the Gospels. I start with the prologue. This is one of the ways in which John is different from the other Gospels. It is not so much part of the story as it is a reflection on its deeper meaning. In this passage we find many key terms that will be repeated throughout the book. They're marked in yellow here. They include life, light, and glory, as well as the word group word, witness, and truth, the aim of which is to lead us to believe, another key term. And then there is the word grace. Surely this must be a key term for the story of Jesus as well. But remarkably, it does not reappear in John after the first 18 verses. Yet its repeated use at the end of the prologue makes it ring like a climax, the true essence of Jesus and therefore of God. Quote, "And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we have seen his glory, glory as of the only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth. For from his fullness we have all received grace upon grace. For the law was given through Moses, grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen God, the only God, who is at the Father's side, he has made him known." Now notice that John twice connects grace and truth. Grace and truth functions as a summary of the gospel. It is an abbreviated formula, a peg that is capable of carrying a lot of weight. In this respect, it functions a bit like Paul's summary phrase, faith, hope, and love. You can get far living by either of these two phrases. Think about it and you will see they're quite practical. This one, for instance, live graciously, live truthfully, that will take you pretty far. As an aside, notice that it's grace and truth, not truth and grace. We cannot change the order without changing the meaning. With God, grace always comes first, as it probably should in our actions as well. Of course, God does this without ever diluting or compromising truth, but still the order matters. Back to John. How does this phrase function in his gospel if it is not repeated after 1:18? As Jesus shows God in human form, so grace and truth shape the stories that follow. The stories show grace and truth in the flesh, so to say, making concrete that the Word himself, grace and truth, became flesh. Here's how grace and truth become visible in John. Jesus has a word of truth for everyone he meets. Nathanael, Mary, Nicodemus, the woman at the well, the crowd in chapter 6, etc. Sometimes the word is hard, sometimes it is gentle. But it always comes wrapped in a huge dose of grace. It is always love reaching out to the person in front of Jesus, meeting him or her with exactly the word of truth this person needs. No more and no less. This is how God is made known. It is what he is like. This is his glory, grace and truth. And it shows in every encounter of Jesus. I'm going to do two examples of this. First, John 6, the bread of life. Jesus feeding the 5,000 is the only miracle, other than the resurrection, which appears in all Gospels. Only in John is there a long aftermath on the next day. Part of the crowd comes after Jesus, but for the wrong reason. I've always misread this story. I thought Jesus rebukes the crowd for seeking more signs. Instead, they should seek him. But this is not at all what Jesus says. Jesus is clear. You seek me not because you saw the signs, but because you ate the bread and you were filled. Instead of seeking food, they should believe in him. At this point, the crowd does indeed ask for a sign so that they may believe. However, they add a clear hint as to what sign they want, proving Jesus right. They want bread. What they say is, our fathers ate the manna in the wilderness, bread from heaven. In other words, do that manna trick again and we will believe in you, at least for one more day, for as long as that bread lasts. But Jesus has shown them grace in the form of yesterday's amazing meal. Now he will give them truth. They need to eat the true bread from heaven. He is this bread, the bread of life. They must eat his flesh and drink his blood. That's a thoroughly repulsive idea. The multiplication of bread is more than a miracle. It does more than prove the superior power and status of Jesus. It is a sign. It points to something, or rather to someone, namely Jesus, and it seeks to communicate something. At this point, it becomes clear that Jesus draws a parallel between the feeding of the previous day and the provision of manna in the desert. The manna is a type, and the multiplication of bread is a sign, connecting the manna with Jesus. The people of Israel depended for 40 years on God's daily provision for their biological life. This was meant to point forward to the true bread that sustains us to eternal life. To eat his flesh and drink his blood means to partake of Christ. To eat him, to believe in him, to make him our own, daily, if we want our life to have that heavenly eternal quality of fullness and abundance that is so prominent in John's Gospel. I am reminded of the invitation of Isaiah 55. Come, eat and drink, you who have no money. In Isaiah 55, eating and drinking is listening and hearing, that your soul may live. Ultimately, Jesus is the bread and the wine on the table of which Isaiah speaks. So here is grace and truth in John 6. First grace, in the form of a gracious meal, assigned to help them grasp a difficult concept. Then truth. This, Jesus, is what they and we really need. Second and last, Peter's restoration in John chapter 21. When we come to this last chapter in John, Jesus has appeared to his disciples twice. Even Thomas now knows and believes that Jesus is back. But what does this mean? What are the implications of the resurrection? And what are they supposed to do? All of this is far from clear. The disciples must have felt clueless and a little lost. Chapter 21 finds them in Galilee. Peter has had enough. Never one to sit around and wait quietly for what is to come, he announces to the other that he's going out on the lake to fish. The others go along, but they catch nothing. Still, I can imagine it felt good to finally do something again. As they head back to the shore, a man calls out and tells them to cast the net on the right side of the ship. When they do this, they catch so many fish that they have difficulty managing the catch. The author of the Gospel is the first to recognize Jesus. It is the Lord. Impulsively, Peter throws himself overboard and rushes to the shore where Jesus is waiting. He actually has prepared breakfast for his friends. It is the first time Peter is alone with Jesus after his triple betrayal. What an awkward moment. Peter doesn't know what to say. He doesn't know how to handle it. He must have felt awful. And Jesus must have been well aware of this. It is obvious. A huge obstacle stands between Peter and him. In what follows, it may appear that Jesus is being harsh with Peter, as if he won't let him off the hook until he has faced the full scope of his betrayal. But in reality, Jesus is helping him out. Sure, it is painful, but it will solve the problem. Jesus does not directly or explicitly speak of what happened. He finds a better, more gracious way to build a bridge to Peter. Peter may already have understood the link between his denial and what Jesus is asking with the first question. Certainly by the second question, the link is obvious. There is one thing included in the first question that Jesus will not repeat. Do you love me more than these? No doubt, this had been Peter's view of himself before he denied Jesus. No doubt, he loved Jesus more than the others. But after what happened, Peter knows he cannot uphold this claim anymore. Notice his answer. Yes, Lord, you know that I love you. He affirms the third part of the question. Do you love me? But not the second part. More than these. When Jesus asks the question a third time, Peter adds something to his answer. Lord, you know everything. This is as close as Peter gets to an outright confession. By implication, he admits, Lord, you know what happened, and you know that I want to love you, but I failed. Each time Peter answers the question, Jesus reiterates Peter's mission. Through this procedure, Peter is fully restored and reinstated in his apostleship. The obstacle that was there is gone. It will never play a role again. A weight has been lifted off his shoulder. He can look Jesus in the eye again. Truth is not compromised. Nothing is swept under the carpet. Both Peter and Jesus know exactly what this is about. But Jesus has found a way to do what Peter is not able to do. It is truth, but it is grace first and foremost. This is what Jesus is like.
The show will be starting in just a few moments. Thank you for your patience.